So, what's with all the Second Amendment nonsense? The Americans seem to speak of the Second Amendment as though it's a religious commandment. It's more like an urge to do things. What's odd to me is that they don't speak of the First Amendment. The First Amendment is an idea that everyone can say anything they want to support an idea they have. In fact, that in matters of dispute, we resort to words, not guns. The Second Amendment, and maybe it's appropriate it's called second rather than first, deals with the ability to settle things with guns, which is really kind of weird. It's kind of like the Wild West. I mean, the proponents of the Second Amendment really are kind of thinking we get to carry guns to defend ourselves against the great unwashed, and they, of course, won't have guns, and we'll just be able to control them. And this is rather consistent with the country, the United States, which has for a long time taken the view that it has the right to tell other countries how to organize their politics because they have enough firepower to be able to enforce it on the rest of the world. And so the citizens of the United States become almost in love with the idea of using guns as a way of settling things. They've lost touch with their First Amendment rights. And of course, we're seeing things like the persecution and prosecution of people like Julian Assange, who is a reporter whose only crime is to reveal what the government did that it didn't want people to know about. And not because some spy will get caught by another country, but because it embarrasses the government. There is a certain kind of irony to all of this, because when you look at the United States, they base a lot of their wealth and prosperity on the war economy. I mean, this is what Dwight Eisenhower talked about. He said, "Be careful of the military-industrial complex, because the industry of the United States is now basically a munitions industry. You know, it's kind of like the old Phil Oakes line. You know, I believe in God and Senator Dodd, and working in a defense plant as a way to be able to have a successful economy." And it's really ironic because it's socialistic. Here's the government being the employer. They pay so many soldiers, like it's ridiculous, disproportionate number of soldiers to any other country who has a military budget. So they're spending to create employment. They're paying soldiers' salaries. If they could only pay doctors' salaries, and educators' salaries, they might actually have something. But they're paying soldiers' salaries, and not only that, they're buying equipment for the soldiers, the so-called defense plan, where so much government money is spent in every state, each and every state, trying to buy votes by keeping employment up, by having munitions manufactured in their states, which is historically one of the reasons that no American politician, Republican or Democrat, will ever try and reduce the amount of money spent on military spending. It's horrible. And such an irony, right? Other countries, like Canada, not U.S., Great Britain, the rest of Europe, Australia, New Zealand, they spend their money on things like healthcare, education, a decent standard of living. And even though they have higher taxes than in the United States, they have a greater overall level of wealth. Overall. Yeah, no, Americans still have some very rich people, but the average American is no longer wealthy compared to the average Canadian. In fact, there's a recent study showed that the United States has the worst healthcare outcomes of 11 major Western civilized democracies. Crazy. Anyway, I keep looking at these Americans talking about the Second Amendment as though that's the answer to their prayers, and not the First Amendment, where the real answers will come from.